Imagine getting a message from your own mother. Not asking for help, not saying she loves you, but ending your relationship with one cold sentence. We're done. That was the night my phone buzzed, and my world went silent. This is the story of how I walked away from the family I once saved. It was a Tuesday night in Tulsa when everything changed. My name is Jennifer Hayes, 35, an interior designer, and someone who thought family meant forever. But that night, I learned that sometimes, the people you love most can hurt you the deepest. My phone buzzed. A message from Mom. I smiled for a second, thinking it was something simple, maybe a recipe or a check-in. But when I opened it, my heart stopped. Don't call or come over. We're done. That was it. No explanation. No warmth. Just a final, cold sentence that shattered years of loyalty and sacrifice. I didn't cry. I didn't even ask why. I just typed back 2 words, got it. And that was the last message I sent to my family. Growing up in Tulsa, our family looked picture perfect from the outside. My dad, Stephen Hayes, was the proud owner of a chain of family restaurants, the kind everyone in town knew. Mom had given up her career in banking to help run the business. My younger brother Brandon. He was the golden child. The heir. The one they believed would carry on the family name. And then there was me, Jennifer, the odd one out. The dreamer who wanted to design spaces instead of serve tables. From the time I could remember, Dad made it clear what my life was supposed to look like. The restaurants are our legacy, he'd say at dinner, pointing his fork like it was a decree. You'll learn the business, Jennifer. But I didn't want grease-stained aprons or balance sheets. I wanted light, color, movement, spaces that made people feel alive. By high school, I was sketching floor plans in my notebooks, dreaming of places I hadn't even seen yet. When I told Dad I wanted to study interior design, he laughed. That's a hobby, not a career, he said, his tone sharp enough to slice through me. Mom just looked down, her silence choosing his side. At 17, I got accepted to an art school in Chicago. The letter felt like freedom. But Dad's reaction crushed it in seconds. If you're not joining the restaurants, you're on your own. No tuition. No support. No family. I remember the look on Mom's face, not pity, not pride, just distance. And Brandon. He smirked like he'd already won. I worked 2 jobs to make it through college, waitressing by day, tutoring by night. Every dollar went toward tuition and rent. Dad never asked how I was doing. Mom would text sometimes, but her words were short, empty. And Brandon. He was back home, skipping classes, working part-time at the restaurants, and still somehow the family hero. One Christmas, I came home from college. Brandon forgot to lock up one of the restaurants, and there was a break-in. Thousands lost. Dad brushed it off. His learning. But when I missed one family dinner because of a design project, I got a lecture about responsibility. That was when I realized, no matter what I did, I would never be enough. Years passed. I built a name for myself. Designed boutique hotels, luxury homes. My work started appearing in magazines. But every family gathering was the same question from Dad, when are you coming to work with us? As if all my success didn't exist. Brandon would joke about my fancy drawings, and Mom would smile. I laughed along, but inside, it stung. I kept hoping one day they'd be proud of me. Then Mom got sick. The doctors said it would be a long, expensive road. I didn't hesitate. I paid her bills, covered the specialists, and flew her to Dallas for treatments. When Dad called, he said, "We'll pay you back." But I knew he wouldn't. Mom sent a 2-word text, "Thank you, Jennifer." That was it. Then came Brandon's disaster. A food truck business he started tanked within months. Debt piled up. Dad called me again, his voice cold and businesslike. "Brandon needs help." Like it was my job. I wired $30,000 to cover his debts. Another $20,000 to keep the restaurants open. No one said thank you. At a family barbecue, Brandon bragged about turning things around himself. Dad clapped him on the back, proud. I stood there invisible. Over the years, I sent more money. Covered broken equipment. Paid overdue bills. Even bought Mom a new car when hers died. Each time, I told myself, maybe this will make them see me. It never did. When I shared a magazine feature of my latest hotel design, Mom barely looked. "That's nice," she said. "But Brandon's been working so hard at the restaurant." It broke me a little more every time. A few years later, when I was finally thriving, I came up with an idea that could have changed everything. I wanted to open a sustainable design firm, eco-friendly interiors for hotels and restaurants. It wasn't just a dream, it was a solid business plan. I had research, numbers, and potential investors lined up. All I needed was one thing: belief. So I pitched it to my family. We met at the old family home. Dad at the head of the table. Mom setting out coffee. Brandon scrolling on his phone, not even pretending to care. I presented my plan, showing them how sustainable design could reduce long-term costs and attract modern clients. When I said I was asking for a $200,000 investment, Dad didn't even let me finish. "A pipe dream," he scoffed. "You think hotels care about recycled wood? They want cheap, not fancy experiments." Brandon chuckled without looking up. "Stick to decorating houses, Jen." Mom said nothing, just rearranged napkins, avoiding my eyes. Tara, Brandon's wife, was the only one who spoke up. "I think it's smart," she said softly. "Sustainability is the future." For a second, I felt hope. But Brandon shot her a look, and she went quiet. Dad waved his hand. "We're not wasting money on this. Brandon's new restaurant is our focus." That was it. The dream, dismissed like it meant nothing. Driving home that night, I felt something shift inside me. I'd given them everything: money, time, loyalty, and they couldn't give me respect. I didn't know it yet, but that meeting was the beginning of the end. After that night, I buried myself in work, trying to forget the sting of their rejection. But deep down, something had shifted. It was like a crack in the foundation of everything I thought I knew about my family. And soon, that crack would split wide open. A few weeks later, after a family dinner, I went into the kitchen to grab my jacket. That's when I heard Tara's voice, low and trembling. "Jennifer, there's something you need to know," she whispered, glancing toward the dining room. "Brandon's been taking money from the restaurants. Thousands. It's why they're struggling." At first, I thought I'd misheard. But she continued, her hands shaking as she wrung a dish towel. "He's been hiding receipts, moving money through other accounts. Your parents don't know how bad it is." I felt the floor tilt beneath me. For years, I'd been bailing them out, paying debts, covering bills, and all along, Brandon had been bleeding the business dry. Before I could respond, Dad's voice echoed from the next room. "We need to finalize the will," he said. "Brandon's the only one keeping this family together. Jennifer's off doing her own thing, she doesn't care about us." My heart stopped. Mom said something soft, something I couldn't quite catch, but Dad cut her off. "Money isn't loyalty. Brandon's our legacy." I stood frozen behind the doorway, every word searing into me. They weren't just blind to what Brandon had done, they were cutting me out completely. After everything I'd given them, they saw me as disposable. I left quietly that night, my hands trembling as I drove home. The next morning, my phone buzzed. It was Mom. "Don't call or come over. We're done." I stared at the screen for a long time. It wasn't anger I felt, it was a kind of hollow silence. I typed back, "Got it," and pressed send. That was the moment I stopped chasing their approval. I opened my banking app and cancelled every automatic payment I'd set up for them. Mom's medical bills, Brandon's debts, the restaurant utilities. Everything. For the first time in years, I took my life back. By midnight, the fallout began. My phone lit up with missed calls, voicemails, texts. Mom's number, then Brandon's, then Dad's. I didn't answer. I just watched the chaos unfold. Brandon's first voicemail was venomous. "You think you can just walk away? You're selfish, Jen. You'll regret this." Selfish. The word almost made me laugh. I'd spent years carrying their burdens, and now I was selfish for finally saying no. The messages kept coming. Mom's were guilt trips, emotional daggers wrapped in nostalgia. "How could you do this to me, Jennifer?" one said. "After everything I've been through, you're abandoning your own mother." Another read, "I raised you better than this." I stared at those words, realizing how deeply she knew exactly where to twist the knife. Dad called at 1 in the morning. I let it go to voicemail, but I could still hear his booming voice. "Jennifer, you need to fix this. The restaurants can't survive without your help. You owe us that much." Owe them? After $300,000 and years of silence, what more did I owe? The next day, he called again. This time, I answered. His tone was clipped, businesslike. "You're putting your mother's health at risk," he said. "Her treatments aren't cheap, and Brandon's under a lot of stress. You need to step up." I took a deep breath and said the words I should have said years ago. "I've stepped up for years, Dad. I'm done." Then I hung up. For a moment, the silence after that call felt like freedom. But the messages didn't stop. Brandon sent another text, "You're tearing this family apart." Mom's next voicemail came softer, pleading. "Jennifer, please, we're family. You can't just turn your back on us." I wanted to believe she meant it, but all I could hear was that text, "We're done." Family doesn't cut you off when you stop paying their bills. A week later, I agreed to meet them at a cafe in downtown Tulsa. Not to reconcile, but to say goodbye properly. When I walked in, the three of them were already there. Dad stiff and cold, Mom teary-eyed, Brandon scowling. Tara wasn't there. She'd texted me that morning, apologizing. "I can't face him," she wrote. I understood. I sat down, calm and collected. I wasn't the same Jennifer they used to walk over. I looked them straight in the eye and said, "I sold my sustainable design project." Their heads snapped up. A national firm bought it for $1 million. I watched the shock ripple through them, but I wasn't done. "I built that from scratch, without your help." Dad's jaw tightened. Mom looked down, and Brandon shifted, uncomfortable. I leaned forward. "I gave you everything, money, time, loyalty, and you threw it away. You chose Brandon, even after he stole from you." Brandon's eyes went wide. "You're lying," he snapped. "You're just jealous." I smiled faintly. "The receipts don't lie, Brandon." Mom gasped. Dad's face went pale. He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. "You called me disloyal, Dad. You cut me out of your will. But you know what? I don't need a cent of your legacy." Mom reached out, her voice trembling. "Jennifer, please, we're family." I pulled back gently. "You turned your back first, Mom. Remember your text. We're done. You made that choice." Her hand fell away, tears filling her eyes. Brandon scoffed. "You think you're better than us? You'll come crawling back." I stood up, calm and steady. "No, Brandon. I won't." I looked at each of them one last time. "This is the last time you'll ever use me." Then I turned and walked out. Dad's voice followed me, cold and sharp. "You'll regret this, Jennifer." But I didn't look back. A year later, I heard what happened. The restaurants went under. Brandon's embezzlement finally caught up with him. Vendors sued, accounts were frozen. Mom and Dad lost everything. Tara left him, moved out of state, and started over. I didn't reach out. That chapter was over. Now, I run a design firm with a team that believes in me. I travel, I create, and I finally live without the weight of guilt. Sometimes, I still think about them, not with anger, but with clarity. I spent so many years trying to earn love that was never real. What I learned is this: family isn't about blood. It's about respect, trust, and choice. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is walk away. If you've ever had to let go of family to find yourself, I want you to remember something. It's not selfish, it's survival. Thank you for listening to my story. My name is Jennifer Hayes, and this was how I took my life back.